I've snuck another little lesson in here between two of our seeds of success. So between stress and breath, I thought it was a really good moment to just dive a little bit deeper into the vagus nerve and how that can affect everything else that we've been talking about. So the vagus nerve is the longest nerve in our body. It's actually one of our cranial nerves, and it's the size of the spinal column, but it winds its way around the body, touching almost every organ and then connecting back to the brain. The vagus nerve plays a central role in autonomic. So we've just talked about our sympathetic and our parasympathetic, our red and green systems, cardiovascular, respiratory, which we'll be talking a lot more about in the next lesson on breath, gastrointestinal, immune, and the endocrine systems. So you can see there it's playing a wide role in how our body functions. Its fibers are actually 80% afferent. So what that means is its job is to send messages about what's going on in the body back to the brain. So 80% of the messages in the vagus nerve are going from the bottom up, if you like. So from the body up to the brain. The vagus nerve has an input into the trigeminal nerve at the level of the brainstem. So way back at the beginning, we talked about the trigeminocervical nucleus, and we talked about how that can increase its sensitization, and that can lead to more migraine attacks. So we can see if our vagus nerve isn't working correctly, and that's leading into that trigeminal part into the brainstem there, that can really dial up that sensitization of our brainstem and therefore make us more likely to have migraine attacks. So just like a muscle, when the vagus nerve is working well, we say it has good tone. And this is a key biological correlation of psychological well-being. It's especially important for our ability to bounce back from stress. So if we're experiencing stress, it puts the nervous system into overdrive. We know that already. And the vagus nerve is what helps the nervous system function at its best. Our goal is not to shut down the sympathetic system. We need that, it's normal. But what we want is to stay in an optimal balance. We want what we call a healthy vagal break so we can stay in a regulated state. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. If the vagus nerve is not working well, or it does not have good tone or poor tone or low tone, we might say, these are some of the conditions that you might experience. Migraine, depression, insomnia, fatigue, inflammation, pain, IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, and immune dysfunction. And I know me personally, I'm pretty much ticking every one on the list, and I know a lot of you will be too. So this vagus nerve is sort of the common link between why we're getting so many of these comorbidities. And it could also be where our solution lies. So that's really exciting. So we've covered this already, but I just want to quickly look at it again. A healthy nervous system, we have the sympathetic branch, which is our fight and flight, and we have the parasympathetic branch, which is our rest, relax, digest. And it's normal for us to go up and down. And you can see in the middle there, I've given us like a normal range. So it's normal to go up when we get a little bit of stress, and then we should go down into parasympathetic. And we might even go above that dotted line. So we might go right up into sympathetic, but then quickly return back into normal. Or we might go right down into parasympathetic and feel even quite low or frozen, but then be able to return back into the normal range. And that's what we call a regulated nervous system. So we go up and down, but we're spending most of our time in that central area, in that green zone. We're not staying in that highly stressed state. And so we also use these terms accelerator and brake with the vagus nerve. So if we're getting in that sympathetic, that high stress state, it's like we're putting the accelerator onto the nervous system. We're going, we're like running, we're fighting, flight, all those things. We go, the accelerator's on. But the vagus nerve, when it's got good tone, it's like applying a brake. So once the stress has passed and it's time for us to return back to regulation, That's where we use our vagus nerve and that braking capacity. It's like riding down a hill on a push bike. When you go down the hill, you're going fast, it's all fun, but you want to just keep your speed in check. So you might have two fingers on the brake, just trying to slow yourself down, keep yourself in the zone that you feel comfortable. And that's what our vagus brake is doing. And if that's not working, it's like taking the hand off the brake and flying down the hill. And then most likely, if you're anything like me, it'll end with a big crash at the bottom of the hill. So we really want to make sure that the vagus nerve has got a good tone and we've got this braking capacity and we can return ourselves to this regulated state. So interoception is probably a new word to you. And what it means is it's our ability to assess the state of our body. So just tuning in to what is happening in our body, whether it's our feelings and thoughts. It might be if you're getting that chest pain with anxiety or that fluttering of the heart, or the increased breath rate. Just being able to tune into that is what we call interoception. So we're learning to listen deeply to our body's cues and to be aware of movement between our different states and noticing the changes in our body. So we're attuning ourselves to the physical as well as the psychological, the feelings and the emotions. So when you become in a stress state, you might feel like your jaw's clenching, your shoulders are lifting, your heart rate might increase, your breath rate might increase, your thoughts might quicken. There's so much that's going on. And rather than letting this just happen to us, we want to now tune in. So we want to notice the changes and try to engage with them and change our state rather than just be consumed and let it go unchecked or out of control. So our goal is to return to that baseline or that homeostasis. And some of us, our bodies aren't doing it naturally. So we need to tune in and give them a little bit of a helping hand. And this change happens when we learn to attend to these shifting sensations and states. And what we want to do is to stop the brain relying on predictive coding. So the brain's got all these little codes embedded in it from past experiences. And so it might be, oh, last time we had a migraine attack, this is how it went. And then it'll just replay the same story because it's coded in our brain. So we need to change this predictive coding. It might not be an attack. It might be last time someone yelled at me, this is how it went. So automatically you go into that stress state and you have the argument and then you run off, and it's just the same story getting played over and over again, like Groundhog Day. And it's because these codes get embedded in our brain. It's actually the brain trying to be efficient. So rather than having to work out everything every time, it's trying to do this for efficiency. And sometimes it works really, really well. Like we know how to tie our shoelaces without even having to think about it, or riding our bike or driving our car. But sometimes it doesn't serve us. So we need to be aware of those times. But the exciting thing is bioplasticity, which means our body is able to change and adapt. So our bodies are constantly evolving, changing and adapting. The more feedback we can give our bodies and the more work we can do, the quicker that will happen, going in the right direction rather than the wrong direction. So we want to learn to stimulate the vagus nerve and to increase the vagus nerve tone. And this is going to decrease our migraine attacks by modulating the pain pathway in the brain. So the input from the vagus nerve can increase the sensitization of the brainstem through its connection with the trigeminal nerve. So we've already seen how that has the cranial nerve, the vagus nerve, has a piercing into the same nucleus as that brainstem area. If the vagus nerve has low tone, if it's not functioning well, then the information, remember 80% of its job is to bring information up, that information coming up gets dialed up, it's amplified, it has no braking mechanism. It's like we're riding down the hill. So those messages are firing into our brainstem, and that's going to dial up the sensitization there, and we know that that's going to increase our risk of migraine attack. It's super important that we try to get some tone into this vagus nerve. So this could be a whole course in itself, but I've just got a few quick tips here that we can try to do to increase the tone of our vagus nerve. So first one, and we've talked about this and we'll talk about it more in the next lesson, is being very focused on our breath. So diaphragmatic breathing, where we're really making sure our breath is going right down deep into our lungs and we're getting that belly movement. As our diaphragm descends, our belly should expand. That's a really lovely breathing exercise to do, just to try to bring back some tone into our vagus nerve, calm down our system, regulate our nervous system. 1:1 breathing, so you're breathing in and out for the same amount of time, is another exercise. So as we breathe in, our heart rate increases, and as we breathe out, our heart rate decreases. So if our breath in is longer than our breath out, then naturally we're going to get this increase in our heart rate, which is not what we're after. So at the very least, we want to be getting that ratio of 1:1. But if we're feeling that maybe we do have poor tone, or we're up in that sympathetic overdrive, a 1:2 ratio is even better. So breathing in for a count of 1, breathing out for a count of 2, or whatever ratio works, or whatever amount works for you, as long as you're using that 1:2 ratio. So it might be breathing in for a count of 3 and out for a count of 6, or in for a count of 2, out for a count of 4. You know what I mean? But the longer the exhalation, the more we're going to calm the system, and that's going to help to tone that vagus nerve. The next one is called attend and befriend. Now this is a little bit trickier, but when you're feeling, so say for example, you're feeling that you might be getting into a little bit of a stress state, especially if it's not too bad. If you're really up there in a high stress state, this is actually probably a little bit too difficult, but if you can just feel it creeping in, if you can go into that interoceptive state and tune into your body and name the state that you're in. So you might be like, I feel like I'm going into this stress state, or I feel like I'm moving into anxiety. I can feel my heart rate quickening. I can feel my breath quickening. I can feel tightness in my chest. So we're naming those states, and then we want to go through those states and befriend them and loosen our resistance. So we might tune into our heart rate. Thank you for trying to, increase my ability to run away, but I don't need to run away in this situation. So let's calm the heart rate down. Let's calm the breath down and go back to that 1:2 breath. If you've got tightness in your chest, you might put your hands on your chest and just bring some, I know it sounds a bit woo-woo, but bring some love into that area and just try to calm the voice in your head, slowing everything down. So attend and befriend. It's not easy, but it does work. Now, another one that is easy is humming, singing, or chanting. The vagus nerve loves that deep vibration in the body, and that's why I've got the picture of the monks here, because you often hear them with that very deep vibration chanting, and that's amazing to increase the tone of the vagus nerve. And one of the sounds I've got here is VU, and this is one that we can do anytime, anywhere. I often do it when I'm driving along. I'm sure if anyone could hear me, they'd have a good laugh, but I've got my windows wound up, so I'm all good. And what this is, it's like the sound of a ship coming in and putting its foghorn on, so that really deep, low, vibratory sound. So taking a deep breath in. So you're really making that V sound and then holding the VU and really trying to get that deep vibration. And you should really feel it, not just up here, but right down in your chest and right down into your tummy. So that's one I definitely recommend that you try doing because it's quick and easy. Splashing your face with cold water is another great one. We don't know why that works, but the cold water on the face does seem to stimulate the vagus nerve. If you are in a high stress state, so like I said, the name and befriend isn't going to really work then, But what might work is shaking off that energy. So you can feel like your body, we're in fight and flight. So we actually need to get that energy out of our system. So standing up and shaking the hands, shaking the legs. Sometimes people don't feel that they need to get so vigorous with it. They might just stand or sit and sway from side to side, front and back. And this can really help you if you're in that high sympathetic or that flooded emotion state to come back to regulation. Balancing the gut microbiome. Again, this could be a course in itself as well, but we know that there's a really big interaction between the gut, the enteric nervous system, and the brain. And we've often heard people now talking about the gut-brain axis. And what we need to do is we need to balance this gut microbiome. The presence of healthy bacteria in our gut creates positive feedback through the vagus nerve. So if our gut microbiome is healthy, then we know the vagus nerve is piercing the digestive system. And so if everything's good there, it'll send happy messages back. And this is where this IBS connection to migraine comes in. So how can we balance our gut microbiome? So it is a feedback loop. So regulating your nervous system will help your gut, and having good gut microbiome will help regulate your nervous system. So it works both ways. Now, I know in the food section we talked about Mediterranean diet already, but it is just the number one diet. It is evidence-based. We know it's great for migraine. We know it's great for our gut microbiome. We know it's great for our cardiovascular system. It's just by far the best choice when you're choosing what to eat. Exercise we've already talked about. Sleep we've already talked about. Now, if you are in a highly dysregulated state and you're feeling that you're really not living in that nice green zone and that you're really very stressed, it might be possible that you need to avoid gluten and dairy for a little while, just while you're dysregulated. What happens is that when you're in this dysregulated state, you can get a leaky gut, and then the gluten and the dairy can cross through that leaky gut and create an inflammatory effect in the body. And we know if we're in that highly inflammatory state, that's also going to predispose us to migraine attack. So while we're working on regulating our vagus nerve, and while we're not feeling like we're well regulated, meaning that we're able to quickly move out of a stress state back to calmness, then that might be something that you want to try. Now, having a dog, I love this one. You've probably seen pictures of me with my beautiful Hugo. It is shown that people that have a dog tend to have a better gut microbiome. So whether that's because you're taking them out for a walk or you're playing with them, the fur, they're rolling around in the dirt, you might be rolling around in the dirt, but that is shown. Having a dog, being a gardener, things like that where you're outdoors and you're getting dirt on your hands has been shown to really help with the gut microbiome. And there are other factors as well, which are now for us not modifiable, but really important. There's evidence to show having a natural birth. So as the baby moves through the birth canal, they're picking up a lot of the mother's microbiome. Breastfeeding, and then age is also relevant. But I always say, let's focus on what is modifiable, because those things we can't change now for ourselves. So there's no point focusing on what we can't do, but rather focus on what we can do. So the gut microbiome is really important, and this might be something that you want to work more closely with a natural health practitioner in terms of if you feel you need probiotics and prebiotics and things like that. But start with the basics, start with the easy things, see how you go, and then you can always go down that line, down the track. We've talked about walking and exercise. Heat to the chest in supine. So if you're feeling, especially if you're feeling dysregulated into anxiety, having that hot pack on your chest, a little bit like in our Attend and Befriend when we were naming the state and bringing love to that area, a hot pack would be good there. Now, grounding exercises, if you're feeling kind of the opposite from the sympathetic state. So you're really low. You're in a state of numbness, depression, dissociation from your body. Like you just can't pick yourself up. You can't get any energy. Then grounding exercises like tapping. So you might be tapping on your body, up and down your arm, over your chest, down the other side. Squeezing is another option. If you're, you might go to the toilet, you might be at work and you might feel like this, you can just stand and just lean on the wall and push onto the wall and just feel that pressure of the wall coming back, energy coming back into your body. Or standing and feeling the ground, the contact points, focusing where your feet are touching the ground, or sitting in the chair, your legs on the chair, your back on the chair, and really focusing on that pressure and trying to bring some of that energy back into your body to upregulate the system. So there's a few ideas there. When you have a migraine attack, some of the things that you can try to do in terms of the vagus nerve, the first one there is, it's like focusing on all your senses and seeing if you can let them go. So it's a little bit like that attend and befriend and naming. So ones that we'll often feel is tension in the neck, the jaw. We might feel our breath change, and we most always will feel those negative thoughts coming in. So rather than just letting it spiral out of control, if we can bring our awareness and try to physically change them. So the tension is quite easy because you can easily open your mouth and relax your jaw. You can easily roll your shoulders or put a hot pack on your neck to relax the tension, slowing our breath. We've got more breath exercises coming up in the next lesson, and just tuning into your thoughts and trying to change that negative to positive outlook will really happen just to let that vagal brake turn on. So we want to bring a level of care and compassion to these areas. And I often say, imagine you're attending to a small child who was hurt. The love and the care that you would give that child, you'd come, you'd pick them up, you'd give them a hug, you'd make sure they were okay, get them a glass of water, whatever was needed, and just try to bring that same level of care and compassion to yourself. This is not the time when you need to be blaming yourself and hard on yourself and angry. Those things are just going to dial everything up. And although it's so hard to turn those feelings off in the moment, it's really not serving us. So we need to just start with our small baby steps and work towards. So a couple more exercises here. One is titration. So this is when we're trying to take our focus away from the pain, and this is very difficult. So say you've got your throbbing pain on the side of the head and all you can focus on is that pain, but try this technique of titration. So if you're lying in bed, you might start thinking about the very opposite end of your body, so your feet, and you might try to focus the feeling of your heels pushing into the mattress, and if you've got a doona or a cover, the pressure down on the top of your foot, or your calves pressing into the mattress, and then coming back to the head pain, and then going back to what's happening with your knees or your hands and things like this. So you're trying to almost titrate the pain away. It's a very difficult technique, but some people find it really helpful. So it's just worth giving it a try. And then the next one is distraction. I'm all for distraction of any type, and there's all different ways to use distraction. But I find when you're deep in a migraine attack, something like watching a funny movie often isn't an option because of the sound and the light and things like that. Going for a walk might not be an option right then and there. But using your senses, you've always got that available to you. So, even if you're lying in bed with an ice pack on your head, a hot pack on your neck, you can lie there and think about your different senses. So you might smell the wheat of your wheat pack, or, you might, if you've got your eyes closed, you might just have the when you've got the ice pack over your eyes, sometimes you sort of get that blue feeling coming through, or what you're seeing through your eyelids, or if your eyes are open, what you can see around your room. You've got your smell, your sight, your hearing, your touch, the feeling of the sheets on your skin, what noises. Try not to focus on the noises that are not serving you, but you might have little birds outside your window or something like that, or you might be listening to some relaxing music and you might focus on that. So using your senses as a distraction technique can be really helpful as well. So that's the end of this little extra lesson. And like I said, I just wanted to pop it in between the stress and the breath because it's really relevant to those two. And like I say, we could go into this in so much more detail, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of insight into what it is, this vagus nerve, how it affects migraine, and then just a few little tips of things that you can try to do to increase your vagal tone and therefore decrease the sensitivity of our brainstem.